My name is Noelle Price, and last Christmas was supposed to be truly happy. A peaceful dinner, warm lights, and the hope that my family could sit together without turning it into another competition. I spent the whole day cooking, making sure every dish was perfect. But the moment the door opened, the smell of my kitchen disappeared under something stronger. My sister walked in carrying her own food to replace everything I had cooked. She entered like she owned the night-holding trays from an expensive restaurant and wearing that polite, practiced smile. Everyone froze as she uncovered each dish, lined them neatly on the table, and said, "I just thought I'd bring something people would actually enjoy." Laughter followed, sharp, cold, and heavier than silence. My parents didn't say a word. My hands trembled, but I kept smiling, pretending it didn't sting. Each plate I had made was pushed aside, every bit of effort erased right in front of me. I looked at her, still calm on the outside, but something in me broke. That was the moment I realized the dinner I'd dreamed of had already vanished. No one expected what happened next, not even me. I still remember the sound of the fork hitting the plate when I finally stood up and said what I had kept buried for years. It all started a week before Christmas, and it ended in a way none of us could ever take back. Before I tell you how that night turned into a family disaster, make sure to subscribe and share your thoughts after hearing this story. Trust me, you won't believe how it ends. A week before Christmas, Salem was already glowing under strings of white lights that hung between the old brick buildings. The town looked like a snow globe, quiet but alive, and for the first time in years I felt ready to host something on my own. It was my first Christmas in my new apartment, a small second-floor space overlooking Essex Street. I had decorated every corner myself, from the wreath on the door to the pine-scented candles lining the windowsill. I wanted it to be perfect, not extravagant, just warm and genuine. I had invited my parents, Robert and Linda, and my older sister, Sophia. It would be the first family dinner I had ever hosted, and the thought made me both proud and nervous. Things between Sophia and me had not always been this complicated. We used to be close, sharing clothes, secrets, and dreams about escaping our small town. But that changed when I left home to study interior design in Boston. Sophia stayed behind, got a steady job at a local bank, and made it clear she thought my career choice was foolish. She would smile politely when people praised my work, then tell me privately that design was a hobby, not a real profession. Her words never left me, even when I tried to ignore them. Sophia had a way of controlling every room she entered. She was confident, articulate, and always had to be right. My parents often described her as reliable, which was their gentle way of saying she ran the family. Whenever she was around, I became the quiet one, the listener, the one who had to prove I was not just the younger sister chasing unrealistic dreams. Robert and Linda loved both of us, but I could always feel the weight of their expectations leaning toward her. She was the one they trusted, the one they believed would never disappoint them. Ethan, my boyfriend, was the only person who seemed to understand how much I wanted this dinner to go well. He had seen me stress over every menu detail and smiled each time I adjusted the centerpiece for the third or fourth time. "You don't have to impress anyone," he said, holding my hands across the table. "Just do this for yourself. You've earned it." I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew this dinner was about more than food. It was about proving that I could host a holiday, that I was capable, responsible, and no longer the naive girl Sophia thought I was. That night, as I sat on the couch with a list of dishes on my phone, I received a text from her. It was short, almost harmless at first glance. "I'll bring something just to make sure." There was no emoji, no warmth, just a cold courtesy that stung more than it should have. I stared at the message for a long time, debating whether to ask what she meant. In the end, I simply typed, "Sure, that's fine," and put my phone down, convincing myself not to overthink it. I went back to planning the grocery list, but the words lingered in my mind like frost that wouldn't melt. I had no idea that one text would ruin the whole holiday. By Christmas morning, the whole town smelled like cinnamon and pine. The snow outside glittered softly under the early light, and inside my apartment warmth filled every corner. I had been awake since dawn, chopping vegetables, tasting sauces, and checking the oven every few minutes. The scent of roasted herbs and baked apples mixed with the faint sweetness of cinnamon rolls cooling on the counter. It was the kind of morning I had dreamed of, quiet, purposeful, full of the anticipation that something good was about to happen. Ethan was in the living room laying out plates and adjusting the candles. His sleeves were rolled up, and there was a faint smudge of flour on his cheek. He glanced at me from across the room, smiling the way he always did when he wanted to calm me down. "Everything looks perfect," he said, placing silverware beside each plate with careful precision. I smiled back, though my heart was still racing. I wanted this day to go right, not just for me, but for my parents. I wanted them to see that I had built something stable, that I could make a home that felt like family. The clock struck 10 when the doorbell rang. My stomach tightened. I wiped my hands on a towel and went to open the door. Sophia stood there, her red coat dusted with snow, her husband behind her carrying 2 large foil trays, and her 2 children giggling as they stepped inside. She was radiant in the way only she could be composed, confident, almost too polished for a family morning. "Merry Christmas," she said, her tone smooth and measured. Her eyes quickly swept over the dining table and then to the kitchen counter. "You've been busy." Before I could reply, she stepped in, fully motioning for her husband to set the trays on the counter. "Just a few things I threw together," she said, brushing snow from her gloves. "You know, just in case yours didn't turn out." The words were said lightly, but they landed like a small knife. I felt the heat rise in my chest, but I forced a smile. "I'm sure everything will be fine," I said softly. My parents arrived shortly after, full of cheer and hugs. For a while, the energy in the apartment felt almost normal. Laughter echoed as Ethan poured coffee and the children played near the tree. But then Sophia began to move around the kitchen. She lifted lids, peeked into pots, and rearranged dishes without asking. I tried to tell myself she meant well, but soon she started replacing things. My roasted carrots were pushed aside for her glazed ones. My apple pie placed behind a store-bought pecan tart she had brought just in case someone preferred variety. When guests from the neighborhood arrived, old family friends who had dropped by to wish us Merry Christmas, Sophia took control of the table completely. She introduced her dishes with exaggerated charm, describing the ingredients as if she were hosting a cooking show. "These are from a chef friend of mine," she said, smiling at my parents. I thought it'd be safer to bring something reliable. The word reliable echoed in my mind, the same word my parents used for her. I stood near the kitchen counter watching as people reached for her trays first. No one said anything cruel, but the silence carried its own weight. Ethan shot me a look, trying to ground me, but my throat had already gone dry. My mother complimented Sophia's organization, my father nodded approvingly, and I just kept setting down the plates as if none of it mattered. Inside, it felt like every laugh, every cheerful toast pressed further into my chest. At one point, Sophia caught my eye. She was leaning slightly over the table, laughing with our father, her hand brushing his arm, as she said something about how some people just aren't used to hosting. Her smile lingered when she glanced back at me. It was subtle, but I knew what it meant. She was winning again, just like always, turning every moment into proof that I was the lesser one. I tried to focus on the flickering candles, the twinkling lights, anything that reminded me this was still Christmas. Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "Don't let her ruin it." But the damage was already done. Every dish on that table felt like a competition I had never agreed to enter. As the laughter continued, I sat back in my chair watching my family eat food I hadn't made. The home I had spent weeks preparing no longer felt like mine. It wasn't a dinner anymore. It was a show I never agreed to host. Later that evening, after everyone left, I finally lost my calm. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the heater and the distant wind brushing against the windows. The table was cluttered with half-eaten dishes and wine glasses that no one had bothered to finish. The smell of food had grown heavy, mixed with the faint scent of wax from the candles that had burned too long. Ethan was clearing the plates in silence, moving carefully, as though he feared a single sound might break something inside me. When the door closed behind my parents, I turned to face Sophia. She stood near the counter, neatly packing up her trays of leftovers with the same confident calm she always carried, the kind that made her seem untouchable. My voice trembled at first, but I forced the words out. "Why did you do that?" I asked. She looked up, feigning surprise as if she had no idea what I was referring to. "Do what," she said lightly, her tone soft and unbothered. I took a step closer. "You replaced everything I cooked. You acted like nothing I made was good enough." Sophia let out a small laugh as she sealed one of her containers. "Noelle, I was helping you. You should be thanking me. Everyone liked the food, didn't they? Isn't that what you wanted?" The sound of her voice felt like a hand pressing down on my chest. "Helping me. You walked into my home and humiliated me in front of everyone. That isn't help." She sighed and rested her hands on her hips, still smiling slightly. "You're overreacting again. You always take things too personally. I was only trying to make sure people enjoyed themselves." The calmness in her tone only made it worse. "You didn't even taste what I cooked," I said, my voice rising. "You pushed my dishes aside before anyone could try them." Ethan stopped stacking plates and looked up. "Sophia, that wasn't right," he said evenly. "Noelle worked all day on that meal. You could have shown a little respect." Sophia's smile vanished, replaced by that sharp defensive look she always wore when challenged. "I didn't realize you were her defender now," she said coolly. "I just made sure dinner didn't turn into a disaster." I felt something inside me snap. "It wasn't a disaster until you arrived." My mother's voice came from behind us, calm but strained. "Girls, please, it's Christmas. Let's not do this." Sophia turned toward her, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "I'm not doing anything, Mom. I was just trying to help like always." My father stepped forward and put a hand on my shoulder. "Your sister didn't mean any harm, sweetheart. Don't let this ruin the evening." I stared at him, unable to hide the disbelief in my eyes. "You're taking her side again?" I said softly. He didn't answer, and that silence was enough. Sophia glanced at me with the faintest smirk, like she had already won. I straightened my back, my voice calm but cold. "Get out," I said. "Take your food and leave." Her eyes widened, shocked. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," I replied. "This is my home and I want you to leave." Sophia laughed, but it was a hollow sound that didn't reach her eyes. "You're unbelievable. I came here to make this night better and now you're throwing me out." I met her stare without blinking. "You stopped being a guest the moment you decided I wasn't good enough." Ethan's hand brushed my arm, a quiet reminder to breathe, but I shook my head. I had reached my limit. Sophia picked up her purse, muttering under her breath, gathering the trays she had brought. "Fine. Enjoy your perfect little life without me in it." My mother's voice trembled slightly. "Both of you need to calm down. This isn't how families should act." I looked at her, my throat tightening. "Maybe that's the problem, Mom. This is exactly how our family acts, and I'm done pretending it's normal." Sophia glared at me one last time, then turned and slammed the door behind her. The echo of it seemed to rattle through the room, sharp and final. My parents left soon after, their faces pale and quiet, and the sound of their footsteps faded down the hall. Ethan sat beside me on the couch without saying a word. The Christmas lights blinked weakly, reflecting in the empty glasses still scattered across the table. I stared at the tree in the corner, its needles beginning to fall one by one onto the floor, until all that was left was silence. That silence felt colder than the snow outside. 2 days later, my phone would not stop buzzing. It started early in the morning, the screen lighting up with message after message until I could no longer ignore it. I reached for it, still half asleep, and saw Sophia's name everywhere. She had posted a long public message on her social media page, complete with a photo of our family taken last Christmas. The caption began with, Some people forget what family means. My stomach sank as I began to read. In her post, Sophia wrote that she had been thrown out of her younger sister's home on Christmas night after trying to help make dinner better. She described me as selfish, jealous, and ungrateful. Her words painted a version of me I barely recognized, a spoiled, bitter woman who humiliated her own sister in front of their parents. She even wrote that I had screamed and cursed, which never happened. The post was long, detailed, and written with the tone of someone telling a heartbreaking story, which made it sound believable to anyone who did not know the truth. The comments section grew quickly. Dozens of people rushed to comfort her. Some said things like, "You're too kind, Sophia," and "You did not deserve that." Others went further, leaving cruel messages aimed at me. They called me names, said I was toxic, ungrateful, jealous of my sister's success. I felt the room spin as I scrolled. Every line seemed heavier than the one before. Ethan tried to take the phone from my hand, but I pulled it back. "She is lying about everything I said." My voice breaking. He looked at me quietly, the kind of silence that meant he knew words would not fix it. By noon, the story had already spread beyond her circle of friends. Mutual acquaintances began messaging me asking what had happened. Some of them sounded polite, others accusatory. One old classmate wrote, "I never thought you'd do something like that, Noelle." I put the phone down, but it kept lighting up again. In the afternoon, my mother called. Her voice was calm but heavy, the way it always was when she wanted me to give in. "Your sister is very upset," she said. "People are talking. You need to fix this before it gets worse." I asked her if she had even read the post. She said yes, but followed it with, "It doesn't matter who is right. Family reputation matters more. Just call her and apologize." I could not believe what I was hearing. Apologize for what? For telling her to stop disrespecting me. There was a pause. Then my father's voice came on the line. "Noelle, this is not the time for pride. Be the bigger person." I hung up without saying another word. For the rest of the day, I sat in front of my laptop staring at the screen. I wanted to ignore it, to let it fade away, but the more I read, the clearer it became that Sophia had planned this carefully. Her post included subtle exaggerations about my work, my apartment, even my personality. She wrote that I had always been jealous of her success and that she only wanted to help her struggling sister feel included. Every line felt like a knife turning slowly. That evening, Ethan brought me tea and sat beside me. "You can't let her control the story," he said. I did not answer right away. My heart felt heavy and my thoughts tangled between anger and disbelief. Then, as I refreshed her page again, I saw she had added something new. It was a photo, an edited one. She had cropped an image from Christmas night to make it look like I was yelling while she stood calmly beside me. The caption read, "Even love can't fix cruelty." That was the moment the sadness turned into something sharper. "If she wants a show," I said quietly, "I'll give her one with the truth." Ethan watched me, unsure of what I meant, but I already knew. For years, Sophia had twisted reality to make herself the hero of every story. This time, I would not stay silent. That weekend, I opened my TikTok app and hit the Go Live button. My hands were steady, though my heart raced beneath the calm surface. I had spent 2 nights thinking about what to do, watching the lies about me multiply online like wildfire. Every time I refreshed the screen, another stranger had an opinion about who I was and what I had done. But now it was my turn to speak, not to fight, not to beg for sympathy, but to tell the truth exactly as it happened. The ring light glowed softly across the kitchen, the same place where everything had fallen apart just days before. I sat on a stool facing the camera while Ethan stood behind it, quiet but supportive, his eyes reassuring me that I was doing the right thing. I took a breath and started speaking. My tone was calm, my voice steady. "Hi everyone," I said. "I know some of you have seen posts about me this week. I want to share what really happened that night." I didn't mention Sophia's name, not once. I referred to her simply as a family member because this wasn't about revenge. It was about honesty. I explained how I had spent days preparing dinner, how I had been excited to host my first Christmas in my own home, and how someone had arrived and replaced my dishes without a word. My voice stayed even as I spoke, but the memory of that humiliation burned just beneath the surface. Then I said, I know words can be twisted, so I want to show you what actually happened. I clicked on a short clip from my home security camera. The footage showed me setting dishes on the table, smiling, arranging everything with care. Then it showed Sophia arriving with her trays, lifting each of my plates and setting hers down instead. I didn't speak during that part. I let the silence do the work. When the video ended, I looked back at the camera. This isn't about hating anyone. It's about learning when to protect yourself even from the people you love. My comment section started filling immediately. Wow, this is heartbreaking, one wrote. She handled this with so much grace, said another. Ethan gave me a small nod from behind the camera. He knew I had needed this moment not for validation, but for closure. Within an hour, the live stream had tens of thousands of views. The hashtag Christmas Dinner Truth began spreading across platforms. People stitched the video discussing family boundaries, manipulation, and the hidden pressure of being the quiet one who never fights back. I didn't expect it to grow like that, but by Sunday evening, small creators and family therapists were talking about the story. One podcast reached out asking me to join an episode about family boundaries during the holidays. I agreed. When I appeared on the podcast, the host asked how I had stayed so calm. I told her the truth, because for years I let myself believe that silence meant peace. But it doesn't. Silence only protects the people who hurt you. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of messages arrived, people sharing their own experiences of being disrespected or dismissed by relatives. It felt strange but freeing to realize that my pain had a purpose. Meanwhile, Sophia tried to fight back. She posted another message insisting the footage was taken out of context and that I had edited it to make her look bad. But the audience had already seen enough. They noticed how she changed her tone, how she avoided answering direct questions. People began unfollowing her, leaving comments that said, "Accountability is not cruelty," and we all saw the video stop lying. For the first time in my life, the truth didn't feel small or fragile. It stood on its own, strong enough to face everything she threw at it. When I closed my laptop that night, the notifications were still rolling in, but I didn't need to read them anymore. I looked around the quiet apartment, still faintly decorated for Christmas, and felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. Ethan wrapped his arm around my shoulder and whispered, "You did it." I smiled, not out of victory, but relief. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. A month later, the storm had finally settled, but not for her. The world had moved on, but Sophia was still caught in the wreckage of the chaos she had created. Her name had become a cautionary tale on social media, a reminder of how fast sympathy could turn to scorn when the truth came out. The company where she worked, a mid-sized marketing firm in Portland, released an official statement about upholding ethical and professional integrity. Within 24 hours, Sophia was quietly dismissed for publicly engaging in conduct that damages the company's reputation. The news spread quickly among her colleagues, many of whom had once praised her charm and ambition. Now those same people unfollowed her accounts and avoided her calls. She tried to post an apology video, but it only made things worse. Her tone was defensive, her smile forced. Comments poured in, accusing her of insincerity. "You're sorry, because you got caught," one wrote. "You tried to ruin your sister's life for attention," said another. By the end of the week, Sophia deleted all her social media accounts, yet screenshots of her old posts continued to circulate. Her public image had collapsed completely. Behind the scenes, her personal life was unraveling too. Her husband Daniel had stood by her through years of small dramas, but this time was different. He told her he could not keep defending someone who refused to take responsibility. One morning he packed his clothes and the children's things into the car and left without another word. Sophia watched from the window, her face pale and unreadable, as the taillights disappeared down the street. The neighbors saw it all. By nightfall, whispers had started, and by the next morning she was alone in that house that once held her pride. A few days later, my phone rang again. It was my mother. Her voice was quieter than usual, fragile, almost trembling. "Noelle," she said, "your sister has lost everything. Please, she needs you. This family needs to come together again." I closed my eyes, letting out a slow breath before answering. "Mom, I don't hate her," I said. "But I can't go back to pretending nothing happened. I just want peace." There was a long silence on the other end, followed by a soft sigh. "You sound like your father," she said finally, her voice carrying both disappointment and resignation. Later that evening, as I was cleaning up the kitchen, a notification appeared on my laptop. It was an email from Sophia. The subject line read, "Apology." For a long moment I hesitated before opening it. The message was long, filled with carefully chosen words. She wrote that she was sorry for how things turned out, that she never expected it to go so far, and that she hoped I could help calm the online anger. Not once did she admit she had lied. Her tone was polite but hollow, the kind of apology meant to protect herself, not to heal what she had broken. I sat there rereading the words, trying to feel something: anger, pity, forgiveness, but nothing came. The damage had been done, and no sentence could erase it. Ethan walked in quietly and placed a cup of tea beside me. "Are you going to reply?" he asked. I shook my head. "No. Some things don't need answers." Then I clicked delete and watched the message disappear. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and the last trace of winter. For the first time in years, the silence in my home felt gentle, not heavy. I smiled, not out of triumph, but understanding. Some lessons cost more than pride. This Christmas, the snow fell softer on Salem. The air carried a quiet gentleness, as if the town itself had learned how to breathe again. A full year had passed since everything changed, and life had finally settled into something calm, steady, and beautifully ordinary. My days began with sunlight pouring through the tall windows of my small studio downtown, where I worked with clients who trusted my designs and sometimes stayed for coffee after meetings. There was laughter in that space now, not tension. Ethan often stopped by during lunch breaks to bring pastries or help rearrange a display. We had learned how to build peace without needing anyone else to validate it. On Christmas Eve, we cooked together, the kitchen filled with the scent of rosemary and butter. I set the table with mismatched plates, a little uneven, but perfect in its imperfection. We didn't talk about the past, not because it hurt, but because it no longer ruled us. We had both learned that happiness was not something to prove, only something to protect. Occasionally, I still heard small updates about Sophia. Friends of friends mentioned she had not returned to work, that she kept mostly to herself now. Her name appeared in online forums from time to time, but the world had already moved on. I felt no anger when I thought of her. The bitterness had dissolved somewhere along the quiet months that followed, replaced by something gentler, understanding perhaps, or just the recognition that we cannot save people who do not want to change. Peace isn't found in fixing people. It's found in walking away. Sometimes as I walked home through the softly falling snow, I would think about that night a year ago, not with pain, but with gratitude. It had taught me more about strength than any success ever could. And when I looked at the lights glowing behind every window, I realized that peace had always been waiting, hidden beneath the noise of needing to be loved the right way. If you've stayed until now, thank you for listening. Family stories can hurt, but they can also heal. They remind us that even in the deepest conflict, truth and kindness can coexist. What would you have done if someone tried to humiliate you in your own home? Share your thoughts below. I truly value every comment and every heart that chooses to listen before judging. If this story made you think about your own family boundaries, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes stories help people find the words they've been afraid to say. Subscribe for more true life dramas where healing begins quietly and peace often starts with silence.